Greetings. Welcome to another episode of heCast, the official podcast of He Changed It. I am Mike Chisholm. As always, happy, as always, excited to be here. As always, excited about the advancements of the app, where things are going. If you haven't downloaded He Changed It yet, download it quick. Before this podcast drops, I think we might still be in the free zone, where before any of the stuff that goes on the other side of the paywall happens, anybody who downloads it right now and signs up is going to be a lifetime member. So if you or any other men out there know somebody who might appreciate what it is that He Changed It is trying to do, download it. If you like heCast, subscribe to it. You know, throw some comments out there. Go into He Changed It and ring our bell a little bit. We can talk about some of the guests that we have, about some of the topics we talk about, all the things going on in our lives, in the lives of the He Changed It community out there. I am excited as always because I get to talk to very, very cool people. This is one where I'm a little bit more excited. I'm a little bit more. This is one of those podcasts that's going to be me just kind of kicking back and having a conversation with a friend. And Troy Reeves is a guy who I instantly, after meeting him, have thrown into this category of, I've heard the phrase, a fisherman can always recognize another fisherman. I don't know. It's a movie. It's from a movie. I heard it somewhere, but at the end of the day, I know that, that I recognized Troy immediately. And there was a lot of commonalities there. It's like, okay, this is really, really cool. He also has one of the coolest job titles ever. Anytime I can say that somebody's a psychotherapist, and I'm always happy about that, poetically, it just pleases me. He's a psychotherapist. That's a rad title and a rad position, but it's also a very powerful position. And he has helped a lot of guys. And it's a really cool opportunity to be able to pick the brain of somebody off hours who has this vocation, because there's a lot of insight there. And his story has taken him to a place where he has a unique insight, and we're going to get into that. Troy Reeves, thank you so much for taking time out of your day. I know how busy you are with clients and all family and all that stuff. Thank you for taking time to be on heCast today, buddy.
This is my absolute honor, Mike, and I'm so excited about where this conversation is going to go. I'm excited about the people that are watching. I'm excited about going into places where none of us may be comfortable of going before. Thank you, Star Trek, for some of that. Yes, Star Trek. Okay, good. I'm trying to not cross my lore between Star Wars and Star Trek, and I'm like, okay, keep my inner geek at bay. And oh yeah, it's an absolute privilege to be here, and I'm just honored. And if I can add value to what he represents, then to me this is just another extension. And I look so much forward to seeing where we can continue to collaborate, and just where we can just together, as you said, be two fishermen fishing in a very big pond of a lot of hurting people, and how we can maybe shine a light on the realities, the myths, the truths, the lies surrounding men, mental health, mental illness, and how can we normalize the struggle. And I don't even have a script, and I don't think you do either, but we're just going to have some fun. And wherever we want to go with this, my answer is yes, and I'm ready to go. I'm ready to keep pace. So thank you for having me on the show.
Oh man, it's our pleasure. I appreciate where you're going from a career standpoint, and the idea that you're a therapist, but at the end of the day, you've gone kind of beyond some of the science, and you focused on some training from different development coaches and things like that. You and I have a common mentor in the fact of John Maxwell. And I know that you're building In Pursuit with Chris Lloyd, who's been on the podcast a few weeks ago, and you're building things just outside of a natural therapeutic practice. And it's exciting to see that. It's exciting to see you wanting to be someone who can cast a very, very big solution net for people. I want to let people get to know you a little bit.
Sure.
Did you know right out of high school you were going to be a psychotherapist?
Not at all. I mean, like most of us, it's probably the most daunting question to ask an 18-year-old. How do you want to trade the next 40 years of your life? And we're like, I don't know. I see that now with my sons. I see that with with some of the millennials that are struggling because people are asking them tough questions. And it's like, well, what do we do? For me, it was always healthcare, which was interesting because I started off wanting to be a cardiac surgeon. I had the grades for it. I had the IQ, and I was like, that would be cool, mostly because of the money. And then that sort of changed. And then I realized, you know what, doctors, I like doctors, but nurses, that's different. Nurses are that bridge, the advocate. They get to walk in the science of medicine and hold the hand of their client. And I thought that's more suited to who I am. And somehow through all of that, it led me down a very interesting path of sales in the beginning, which was totally weird, totally not in my scope because I had my vision on healthcare, but I got into sales and did life insurance and financial planning. And then that opened up into vacuum sales. I used to be one of those Kirby guys going, welcome to the Kirby family. Here's a $2,500 vacuum.
Oh my God. Those guys taught you how to spell tenacity with a capital T, I bet.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then from sales, it took me into, where was I going with? Oh yeah, sales, healthcare, and all of this stuff. It just, over the course of my life, sales taught me the art of persuasion. Healthcare taught me compassion. Being a financial planner taught me wisdom in finances and management. And all of this together, I didn't realize this, but this was God grooming me in such a way, shaving off those edges, getting me to a place where I could be relevant for a world that was hurting. And it started with actually a journey in the military. I was probably the black sheep of my family. I didn't want to go in the military, even though most of my family comes from a police background or military.
Right.
And I waited till the absolute last minute. I was in my late 20s and decided, you know what? I'm not grooving the way that I hoped in sales and finance. So I sold my financial planning business, joined the military, and they paid for a full nursing degree. And that was awesome. So I became a young officer, served the country for 12 years in the uniform. And through that whole process, becoming a registered nurse, choosing my specialty back in 2011 in mental health, because I saw something that I didn't like. I saw guys falling in the cracks. I saw soldiers that went to Afghanistan that came back fractured. There was something broken. I remember one story of a young guy, corporal. I'm not going to say names, but I mean,
Sure.
This young corporal in my office breaking down, finally admitting defeat because of his addiction that got him in trouble at work. And what I'm hearing is a story of this guy going to Walmart, absolutely losing his shit on a mother and a daughter because they're fighting about a hair elastic. Right. And he was going bananas because he just saw a 7-year-old's head roll down the street and he doesn't know how to process this. And some of the things that we as soldiers have been asked to do in accordance with our rules of engagement indirectly violate our humanity. So how do we reconcile that wound? And this guy comes back and he doesn't know how to adjust. The military has taught him, suck it up, buttercup. And it's probably the hardest, worst thing the military could ever do to men in a fighting force is to suck it up.
Okay, so I'm gonna stop you right there just for a second, Troy, because I think we've hit on a major point here, and it's not that you haven't been in the military of the past. At the end of the day, safe to say, the military that you're speaking about is the military that still exists today. So, and the attitude of, because we talk about this on a lot of episodes of heCast, the idea of how we're trying to take the phrase man up back. But you're talking about the very stereotypical version of that man up, what you would think about. Don't be a pussy, just man up, right? Like suck it up. What you see here, you can handle it. You're tough enough to handle this stuff. That's the attitude that is really, really pushed into some of these, some of them late teenagers, early 20s, men and women in Canada.
Yeah.
And it's still happening.
It is. And
Interesting.
It's sad. I got out. I mean, if there's value, I'll talk about some of the reasons for why I got out. But I mean, it's been an interesting journey for me because I've been out for 6 years. So in the 6 years that I haven't worn the uniform, A lot of my friends are still wearing it. I've watched from a distance as they go through things. I've watched other people released from the forces, battling their demons, dealing with the skeletons in the closet of things they've been asked to do in the line of fire. And at the time when I served, I was one of a very rare breed. Very few military nurses chose a specialty in mental health. We considered it the dark side of nursing. Everybody wanted the sexy stuff, critical aerovac, like get on the Black Hawk, do all the crazy stuff. That's the sexy stuff. That's where everybody wanted to be. Or the OR, where you get to do all the surgical procedures.
Right.
So critical care, aerovac, OR, those were the buzz parts of nursing. And I intentionally wanted mental health because of that corporal, because of other people that I remember going through the journey with them. And at one point, and this was right near the end of my career, which happened so suddenly, I had another, I think he was a private, or maybe he was a corporal, but he just got back from Afghanistan, a young man of faith, and he was really struggling with what he had to do and how it was an apparent violation of his faith. Because the Bible's clear, do not kill. And he had to break that command several times in the line of defending the truth and bringing freedom to a torn nation. So how do we work with somebody like that? This young guy is falling apart in my office, anxiety 10 out of 10, conflicted. And somehow through my assessment, I understood that this was a young man of faith. I also am a man of faith. And I met him where he was at. I don't care about the sandbox. This is why I went down psychotherapy, because to me, the sandbox can be dangerous. There's a standard of practice. And I'm not saying we violate the standard, but we need critical thinking. That's what nurses are all about, is how do we think outside the box? What else could we do? So I saw this young guy and I knew as a nurse, holistic care still matters. I have to take care of his mental, his physical, and his social and spiritual aspects of his being. And right now it was his spirit person that was in crisis. So I met him where he was at. I offered to pray with him. And keep in mind, as an officer in the forces with a corporal, there's a power imbalance. And I was aware of that.
Right.
And I said, please, 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 if this makes you awkward, please tell me no. I remember grabbing my epaulets and saying, if I could take these things off, I would. Don't call me sir, call me Troy. And he's looking at me going, sir? And I'm like, what did I just say? and then trying to work through his real crisis. And then I offered to pray with him. And he's like, you would do that, sir? And I'm like, of course. And I had the privilege of praying with this young man. And God showed up. And that's the only way I can describe it, because he walked out of my office after a 10 out of 10 anxiety. He told me he was around a 2. I never saw him again. All my subordinates were like, sir, what did you do to him? I'm like, nothing. I loved the kid where he was at. That was it. That was what I was called to do, is love. Little did I know that 6 weeks later, I'd be hauled into my commanding officer's office and essentially charged for abuse of power, coercion. And the words of my charges were, Lieutenant Navy Reeves was administering independent healthcare interventions without consulting the rest of the team. Very vague. The other officers in my circle that saw the charges were like, what were you doing, Reeves? Were you giving meds? Were you diagnosing? And I'm like, I frigging prayed with the kid. That's what I'm in trouble for. 6 months later.
Hold on a second. Hold on. Before you get to the 6 months later, we're going to get to the 6 months later. I want you to think about where you were, what you felt during that time, because there's guys who are listening to this who have been, accused of things or things taken out of context. Or there's a lot of guys who are in that situation where it's like, okay, the reality is this, but the narrative that's being created is something completely different. Can you go back to how you felt in that moment and what you did other than just wake up the next day and just hope for that it got better? Like, can you remember, can you talk about that a little bit, Troy?
Absolutely. I actually haven't thought about that in a while, but I remember the very first thing I felt wasn't peace. It was stress. It was anxiety. I was a young therapist. I didn't know a whole lot back then. I just knew that I gave a damn. And I knew that people needed to be cared for. I knew that love was the most powerful catalyst for change. And I wasn't afraid to do that. A lot of professionals have this hands-off approach, like you're there and I'm the professional. And I'm like, you know what? Come here. If I can give you a hug or shake your hand, or we can have a first name basis, let's normalize that power imbalance, because people don't care what you know until they know that you care. And that hit me. And in that moment, I was a little wrecked. I was a little frustrated because here I am trying to honor God and care for people. I know I didn't make a mistake with the patient. I never, ever had a patient complaint, but it was other professionals who saw fit to complain. In this case, it was a civilian psychiatrist who wrote the complaint, because apparently I found out after the fact, this young guy that I never saw again showed up in that psychiatrist's office, and he had an encounter that healed him. He wasn't on his meds anymore. There was something going on that the psychiatrist was like, help me get my brain around this. Why are you doing so well? And this young guy was just a mile a minute, apparently, going, and this is what happened. And I went to the da-da-da-da, and then the sir over there, and da-da-da-da, and then he prayed with me. And the psychiatrist was like, he did what?
Oh, here we go.
And then that was the end of it. And this psychiatrist thought that I had abused my power and my influence as an officer to coerce this young guy to get off his meds. That I never said a thing like that. And at the end of the day, this young guy needed what he needed and got it. And I'm now holding this bag, feeling my entire guts twisted, because I've never, ever tried to hurt anybody. Even though I don't have that Hippocratic oath that doctors do, it's still the same heartbeat of nurses. We don't go into healthcare trying to screw people over. So for me, I wanted to add value. I knew I was successful in my mission, and I got in trouble for it. And that trouble cost me everything. And I'm scratching my head. The irony, and I'll share this as well, what really threw me for a loop is I was in the middle of writing 3 local policies on how to handle mental health in the forces. And the one thing that was the catalyst of my suspension was, we still want you to finish those policies. And I'm like, so I teach people how to do mental health in the forces, but I'm not allowed to practice. I'm not allowed to see my patients. 6 months, twiddling my thumbs, awaiting judgment. And that tore me apart. And I remember at the end, they stripped me of my mental health specialty, would not let me practice any longer in mental health. I was physically moved offices from the mental health floor to the general nursing area. And they said, you can go back to nursing, but you cannot operate in your specialty. And I didn't have peace about that. I knew that God has called me to do something different. And I knew that people needed to be met in that area. So that was my catalyst to put in my release, and a very short end to a 12-year career happened 6 months later. And I'm still scratching my head going, what was the point? But it was only in hindsight, looking back, that I realized that this was another shift. This was a reason, because men are still hurting. And through that experience, I have been able to connect with organizations like Veteran Affairs, where now I get to work with veterans that are all lost in the cracks. And I get to bring the lens of a psychotherapist, a nurse, and a life coach into these people's lives. And because I wore the uniform, I immediately disarm them. Yes. Because they know I get them. I see them. And that's a huge, huge part of my story, and has opened so many doors for me, and eventually took me down the road of psychotherapy, where I thought, what makes a psychotherapist different from everybody else? In my mind, I look at psychiatry, medical doctors with a focus on pharmacology. So what is the pill for your ill? I don't want to make it overly generic, but that's what I see. I don't know too many psychiatrists that do a lot of therapy. They do a lot of prescribing. Yeah. Then I see psychology, your standard professional in mental health. I probably align a whole lot more with psychology than I would psychiatry. But I've also heard through my clients' experiences that psychologists tend to have a sandbox approach. There's assessments and forms. You do your homework, you come back to me, I'll get my clipboard, tell me how you feel. How did daddy do this? And all this other stuff. And I'm trying to go, how do we change that narrative? So if I were using that sandbox analogy, I'm kind of just outside of the sandbox. I will never tell somebody what to think. My job as a psychotherapist is to teach them how to think. How do we start thinking about the issue, whatever that is? My favorite questions that I use with people, so what? And I do that intentionally, not to minimize the journey, but to get them to think of, so what are you going to do about that now? And then the follow-up question's how. How many people are stuck with a why question? For those of you listening, if you're plagued by why is this happening? Why does this continue to happen? Why am I drowning my sorrows in that bottle or with that addiction, with whatever? Yeah. How do I stop the pain? Let's start changing the why question to a what. So what do? What are you going to change? Who are you going to reach out to? Often the mind that gets us into the mess is not the mind that gets us out. So there's part of the journey. So, and I'm occupying too much space. So feel free to take this in a different direction.
You're not. The idea that the mind that got us into the mess is not the mind that'll get us out is a profound thing. We're going to talk about that more. I just want to throw a couple things out there. The idea that I believe that you are going, the reason that you went through all of the things that you went through is so that you can get to the place that you need to go. And you wouldn't get to that place had you not gone through those things.
Absolutely.
And I think you would agree with that. But many times when we as men are in the middle of that journey, going through the things, the shit that we are going through, so we can get to that final place. And that final place might be a pretty good place. The lack of understanding and the desire to want to give up or throw in the towel in many ways can be extremely tempting. Did that happen to you along the way? And how did you deal with that, the adversity, knowing when you were in the adversity, how did you deal with that to create that new mind?
That's a good question. Let me think about that for a second.
Yep.
I think for me, going back to the emotion, when you got me to think about what I was feeling, there was that frustration. There was that sense of no justice. Mm-hmm. And a lot of men that struggle with anger, this is a little sidebar, but a lot of guys that struggle with anger need to hear this. Anger is a response to injustice. That's what it was designed for. Many times there's valid anger and there's distorted anger. Is what we're really angry about an injustice? Or is it the perception of, I perceive that this happened to me? But we need to ask better questions. One of the things that I teach people very early on is there are two positions that we play in life. There's a detective and there's a judge. Most people don't know there's a detective. We're trained to be judges. We judge our environment. We judge ourselves. How many guys listening right now would put up their hand if I said, are you very critical on you? And everybody's going to be like, yeah, frig, he's like reading my mind, right? So yep. I need every person listening to hear this very carefully. You suck at being a judge. You can learn to be a detective. The script that we started with, we can flip. How do we flip that script on being a judge, which you're not good at because there's one judge? We make a very poor judge because of bias. We are not impartial. We see a limited scope of events and we make a judgment based on that. What I would love to do is trade with every single person listening. Give up the judge, start learning to be a detective. Ask better questions. It doesn't matter what the conclusion is. The power is in the journey. The power is in the questions. How do we take a why and turn it into a what and a how? How do we start normalizing these conversations? How can we start talking and creating a safe place? And the He app is a great, great example of that. How do we create a community of people that are not willing to be silent any longer? For those of you on the fringe, watching, waiting, seeing, can I trust these people? I'm going to lean on you. I want you to lean on me. I want you to figure out, could I trust this ex-military guy? He's not a pussy. He's not weak. Yeah. At least I don't think so. I'm still a nurse. And even my boys, that's been an interesting journey because some of my boys have had to clarify to their friends, yes, my dad is a nurse. And they're like, you mean a doctor? And they're like, no, he's a nurse. And they scratch their head going, that doesn't make sense. But anyways, I digress. So what were the emotions? How do I go through all this stuff? I think there was a point right near the end, because I remember having a training review board, not quite as bad as a court martial or a summary trial, but it's up there. Yeah. It's the whole idea of I'm standing in front of a judge of my peers that were all majors and above. So 3 majors that outranked me,
Yep.
ordering me, and this was the conclusion: we order you to never pray with another soldier.
Jesus.
And I felt the news. I knew what they were expecting from me. They wanted me to bend. They wanted me to go, yes, sir, sorry, sir, I won't do that again. And I would have got my career back. And this was my defining moment. I knew what they were asking me was an unlawful order. And for those listening, yes, there's orders. We're supposed to respect authority. But when that authority breaches the rights of their authority and they start asking us to invalidate certain things, as officers in the Canadian Forces, we were trained, you have to disobey unlawful commands. And this was my test. And I stood up and I said, sir, that's an unlawful order. And I could hear a pin drop. They wrote me off as some religious whack job. My supervisor kind of did the facepalm thing because he told me, just do what they tell you to do.
Just take your medicine.
Yep. And I knew I couldn't do that because what I would be betraying is me, my faith, what I believed in, my ethics, all of that. And I wasn't willing to do that, even at the expense of my career. So now I'm done. I've hung up a uniform that I used to wear with pride. November 11th means something to me. I love putting that uniform on, even to this day, because I'm proud of this nation and I'm proud to have served, but I couldn't serve that mentality anymore. And that was my moment to decide, what do I fight for?
Oh my God. I was proud to serve, but I could no longer serve that mentality. That is the strength that it takes to make that statement, even greater strength that it takes to live that statement. I know I said this right from the get-go when you and I got together, but I'll say it publicly right now. And to those who are listening for that matter, thank you for your service. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. Anybody who serves in whatever capacity, anybody who decides to kind of step out of themselves, whatever the reason may be, sometimes it's so they can go find themselves, whatever it is. Anybody who serves, I am very, very grateful. November 11th is a big deal for me too. I'm a big lest we forget guy because I don't want to repeat some of that shit. You know what I'm saying? So thank you for that, Troy. And at the end of the day, hard medicine to take in the medicine that was recommended, even harder to stand up for the truth in the way that you did. You said a couple things that I want to kind of put the exclamation point on. The fact of the matter is the mind that got you into the mess is not the mind that will get you out of the mess. Then you took 2 really good concrete examples of practical examples of that. You know, the idea of not judging yourself, but instead being a detective. Get introspective with this stuff. And if you're in the mess, if you're at the rock bottom, and instead of judging yourself or allowing others to judge you, you become a detective and say, well, why am I at rock bottom? What's going on with this? What can I do to get out? What is it that got me here? And you become that detective. That is a way of creating that new mind that you were talking about, the mind that was going to get you out of it. So that's a really profound idea of being able to do that. And I just think that I just wanted to accentuate that as we kind of move towards closer to the present. You have this practice coming out of the military, you have this practice and you're tweaking your whole life as you go. You're tweaking everything as you go into where you're moving. And one of the ways that we connected on was the idea of the definition of a man. And what that is in these days. You talk about your faith and one of the key pillars in He Changed It is the different 5 modalities of fitness. And one of the modalities is soul fitness. And soul fitness, and I want to be clear, we're not preaching religion here. What we're doing is we're saying, hey, find that place where you can exercise your soul, whatever that may be. There's a lot of people that do it through yoga. There's a lot of people that do it through meditation. There's a lot of people who do it through a faith of some sort, a religious faith of some sort, whatever that may be. But at the end of the day, if there's men out there who are not exercising their soul, there's a good chance that there is another gear to life that exists that you may not be moving into as you're driving down the highway of life. Does that resonate? Am I being accurate saying those things, Troy, in your mind?
Absolutely. And it's definitely those questions that we need to start asking, all the way back to that again. So what when it comes to soul fitness? I'm kind of in the same boat. I don't ever want to be perceived as a religious guy. Even the charges, even that perceived idea of religious whack job, that's not who I am.
No.
I'm not a religious guy. I may love Jesus, but I hate religion. I hate what some of that organized religion has done in the name of God. And there might be a lot of people listening now going, that's it. Like, I'm open to the idea of God, but I don't like what the church has done with God's message. Totally cool. Ask the questions, connect. Right. If it is that higher power, 12-step ideology, go there. You need something bigger than you. Don't make your higher power something that is going to let you down. It can't be you. It can't be, like, again, the mind that got you into the mess can't be the mind that gets you out. So how do we revamp some of it? How do we ask the right questions moving forward? So, no, I think there's a lot of similarities in what you just said.
We got a lot. There's a guy who was on here a few weeks ago, a life coach, and he was talking about the idea of how many men are faced with the idea of purpose when they hit around 40 years old. And it's because the thing that they were focused on, and it doesn't matter whether maybe it was money, maybe it was, a standing within a religion, religious standard, things like that. Maybe it was a career, maybe it was getting the wife, the kids, the house, whatever. You achieve the things that you set out to achieve. And then you realize that you're still empty. And it's in many men in their 40s, are then charged with the idea of searching for their life's purpose. And they are not equipped necessarily to do that because they've never been equipped to ask the questions that you're talking about, those what questions that are really necessary. Mm-hmm. And it's a theme that's come up over and over again. Do you find that comes up in your practice with some of your patients?
All the time. We're talking about that proverbial midlife crisis. These are the themes of it. Because we've bought the lie that I am what I do. And that's something else I want to challenge. You are not your job. That is not your identity. You are not, for women watching, you are not wife. You are not mom. It's a part of you, but it's not your identity. For the guys have a really hard time separating what I do with who I am. You ask any guy, what's one of the first questions we ask guys when we get to know them?
So what do you do?
Exactly.
Yep.
As if that's who you are. And then we start rank ordering people.
It starts, absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, you're a garbage man. Oh, okay. Oh, you're a president. Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
No offense to garbage men or, presidents of any universities.
Yeah. So that's the next challenge. This is what we've been fed. Our narrative says you are what you do. And then I'm one of those, and it sounds like other life coaches are getting into this as well. We need to start re-scripting. We need to start figuring out when that mindset doesn't get you where you want to be. So what? So what do we do? What would happen if people had the freedom to be instead of do? After all, we're human beings. We're not human doings. And many, many guys get caught up in this performance-based anxiety trap. I need to perform. That's a part of it. I need to achieve. Yes, it's a part of it, but that's not who you are. That's not your identity. If we dig deeper, if you start to ask the right questions, one of the first things that I deal with people is the who am I question. Mm-hmm. I don't know how many times, usually it's a lot more females, especially in the younger years. They come in going, I don't know who I am. And I'm like, well, yeah, that's fine. My real question is, who would you like to become? Let's forget, who am I? Let's look at life as not a collection of identity pieces, but a collection of experiences. It's information for the detective to make better decisions.
Right.
If you got to look back and see everything as info, it's not good or bad, it just is.
Yep.
We can start letting go of some of that. You are not your experiences. I was raped, I was abused. Okay, that's an event. My heart goes out to you and we can work through that, but that is not who you are. I am not victim. I am not rape, whatever. I am not the guy who got fired and lost his job because I got swallowed in my addiction. That's not your identity. It's a part of you, but it's not all of you, and it's not your identity. If we can change some of that, if we can bring back the heart of a man, how is it that men right now don't know how to be men? Where are the fathers? What I keep seeing is a pattern of men in my office struggling because they have no template. Well, I was raised in a broken home. I was sexually abused. I basically took care of my siblings. My mom cried herself to sleep every night because whatever the story is, they're all different, but they all have a similarity. Where are the men? What has happened with men in our society? My heart goes out to many of the faith leaders who have all seemed to fall from grace. How many times do we see the stories of infidelity breaking this church or lowering that guy? Why? Men don't know how to be men. They've forgotten how to fight. What used to be a sword and a shield is now a computer and a desk. And we've lost that sense of danger. We don't understand what to do with danger, what to do with crisis, and we don't have a role model. So one of the first things I try to do is help men connect with what they've lost and then start to go to the so what then. When they realize, well, I don't know what I'm doing. Okay, that's fair. You don't know what you don't know. Sounds obvious, but that allows us to start doing work in their blind spots. How do we free people? So lots of stuff here. And there's
doing work in our blind spots is another one of those sound bites that I'm going to do my damnedest to remember. Boy, oh boy, that's a great word visualization right there, that we all need to do work in our blind spots. And the idea of, what has happened to the men, it's such a, I'm going to ask this question. Maybe you have an insight as to this. You take 100 years off of where we're at right now and maybe 120 years. And you think about how many men are forced to even protect their homestead, their if they're in agriculture or their business or whatever. And you take 100 years off that, and we're in a place of massive protection of what we have. And I'm talking physical protection. I'm talking that reptilian brain thing that's been there since kind of the beginning of societies, that has kind of ebbs and flows as the Roman Empire was built, the Roman Empire fell. But, we as men have had this, we've got a lot of this genetic programming. Mm-hmm. And I guess the question is in the society that we have right now, and I mean, I don't know the answer to this question. I assume that reptilian brain, that those subconscious pathways, that genetic coding that has been passed down for generation after generation after generation, as to that stereotypical hunter-gatherer, whatever you want to call it, role, you can't just light switch that shit off, right?
No.
But we're I would say a segment of our culture is trying to tell us to do that.
Right. And you're touching the real heart of what I do. And it's crazy. It's almost like you're in my head, which is really cool. I don't get surprised very often, and I like this. So I'm gonna show you something, and I'll show the audience something that's gonna hopefully change the way that we think. Like I said before, my job is to show people not what to think, but how to think.
Yes.
We have that hunter-gatherer. We have that primal reptilian lizard brain. Yes, that's there. We talk about the fight or flight or freeze effect of adrenaline or epinephrine on our bodies and where it comes from, and the amygdala. And we could go into all the science, but we don't need to. Yes. The fact of the matter remains, there was a time that was our identity. It's fight. Actually, let me see if I can remember this. In my work around addiction, I learned that the brain has 3 prime directives, primal instincts. The first one is kill. That means defend. The second one is eat, because if I don't eat, I don't get to live. Yep. The third one is sex.
Procreate.
Exactly. So
spread the seed, my friends.
Absolutely. So we're talking about this primal instinct of kill, what's mine is mine. And then eat, it's still what's mine is mine. It's very self-centered. And then sex, I need to spread me. I need to put me back out there. Yep. And what I'm trying to teach people to do is, how do we not necessarily get rid of it, because there's a strength in that primal wiring. But again, is that who we want to be? Let's change the question. Who am I? Am I just a hypersexual, self-centered, kill, eat, protect, live in my bubble? Or what happens when we start to realize that in order to have effect, in order to have significance or success in this world, not just stability, we have to learn how to connect with people. We are social creatures. So how do we connect before we correct people? How do we How do we start building this kind of new identity for ourselves? And what I want to show you is this. If anybody's colorblind, you may have trouble with this, but can you help me out here, my friend? And what colors are you looking at right now?
I'm looking at orange and yellow.
Perfect. What I want you to do and what I want everybody else to do is to forget what you know about colors for 1 second. What if I said this one is purple and this one is black? Can you remember that for me?
Yes.
Okay. What color am I holding up?
Say something else. Go back to you for a second because I'm seeing me right now.
Okay. What color am I holding up?
Purple.
Now what?
Black.
Yes. Now what?
Black.
Now what?
Purple.
Yes. Okay. You did well. All I'm trying to show you and everybody else is that our brains, despite whatever trauma, despite whatever expectations, despite whatever shame, your brain right now has the ability to learn something, to unlearn something, and to relearn something. What if, here's my assumption, what if most of the things that get us stuck as men, what if they were perceptual? What if we didn't know what we didn't know? And what if this whole time we've bought a lie? We thought, I must be my identity. It's what I do that defines me. What if that wasn't true? What if we could go deeper than that? What if we understood that it's not an invalidation of the heart of a man to also be open and honest and tender and nurturing, to have conversations, that the suck it up buttercup mentality actually hurts a deeper part of who we are that's designed for connection? What if we could understand that most of this is perceptual? And if we can start to accept that maybe our reality isn't actually based on reality, we can start to change some things. Here's one more game that I want to do with you.
Okay.
I know we haven't practiced this.
No.
So I want you to finish each of my sentences.
Okay.
Hopefully we get this right, because it'll look really dumb if we don't, but it's never failed me.
Hey, Troy, I have made an entire career of looking really dumb. I'm okay with that.
Okay. So I don't want you to overthink the answer. I just want you to spit out the first word that comes to mind.
Okay.
So sometimes I win and sometimes I
lose.
Right. Money doesn't grow on
trees.
Yeah. The early bird gets the
worm.
Yep. Good things come to those who
wait.
Yep. And this is as good as it
gets.
Perfect. 5 for 5. I almost think we grew up in the same home. So now everybody else listening, how many of you had the exact same words? I just want you to understand that our brains are wired the same way. Society, pressures, social norms, that hunter-gatherer brain, all of this stuff is a part of a script. And what if we could change that? What if we had a different perspective? What if we started examining what we actually believed? You might not have known this, but you said two things right now that are in opposition. You said the early bird gets the worm. You also said good things come to those who wait.
Yes.
So what's true? Is there a bigger worm for the second bird? Or like, we accept this. This is our reality. And yet we understand that sometimes what we believe is in conflict with each other, because sometimes it is the early bird gets the worm. Sometimes if you're that guy that's waiting 8 hours in advance of Black Friday, you get the good deal. But it's also true that good things come to those who wait. Let's think about investments. Let's think about all kinds of other things. We delay the gratification and we get something better in the end.
Yep.
Now let's take the very first one. Sometimes I win, sometimes I lose. What if we could change that narrative for free, for everybody right now? What if it was no longer winning and losing? What if we understood that losing is the catalyst for learning? And what if we could change the whole script to sometimes I win, sometimes I learn? Yes. And we take away the sting from losing, because you don't actually lose. You can fail forward. These are all the kind of things that John Maxwell, if anybody is a fan of John Maxwell, they'll recognize some of what I'm saying, because he wrote a book called Failing Forward. He wrote a book called Sometimes I Win, Sometimes I Learn. And these are all a collection of his mistakes as a leader and a trainer of leaders. And I want to try and reparcel that truth in bite-sized pieces that people can connect to this and go, that makes a lot of sense. That's why I went to the John Maxwell organization and got all of the training as one of his life coaches. And I'm now a part of the John Maxwell team, where I try to meet people where they're at and add value. And that is what I would love to see for everybody listening. How can we ask the right questions? How do we destigmatize mental health? How do we be bold and ask the questions that need to be asked and pull together as men and start redesigning our life? There's another thing I'll throw out there. How can we stop accepting what is? And how can we start designing what could be? Many, many people accept. And even 12-step ideology, the Serenity Prayer, it's all about acceptance. Acceptance is good. It's a first step, not the last step. For all of you that have gotten to a place of acceptance where, you know what, this happened to me, but I'm going to let it go through me. How can we move from acceptance to design? Design requires action. Action requires now, today. Today matters. Anybody listening, do not wait. If you're feeling a tug, talk. This is what we're here for. Real men having real conversation. And you guys have to start asking those questions. We don't want you to fall in the cracks.
You've blown my mind. You do that a lot, and I just appreciate that so much. The food for thought. We got a feast here, and it's. I know that there's a lot of people who go through the Tony Robbins training and the John Maxwell trainings and the some of these people out there. Tony Robbins would say he's not your guru, but there's a lot of beacons of coaching and things. I just want to say that I can imagine that there aren't a lot of therapists who go through this type of coaching, and your unique path in this is, to me, I'm so grateful and blessed to know you. I told you it was going to go by fast, and it has, and we need to circle closer to the finish line. I'm really, really grateful, Troy, that you have come into my life. He changed its lives, and you're able to bring that really unique insight, because you've got a wealth of knowledge and experience that you have brought to the starting line before moving into this really applicable area of coaching. And you must be unique. I can't imagine you saw a lot of therapists getting the same coaching training that you have. I can't imagine that that's the case.
And it's funny that you bring that up, because all through my coaching training, the message was constantly reiterated: coaches aren't therapists.
This one is.
and then that's what I was saying. I'm like, what about me? And I knew right away I was creating a hybrid model, and I'm okay with that. I'm way out of the sandbox. That's why I went down psychotherapy, because what I'm trying to do, and what I'm hoping you're starting to experience even now, is that I'm trying to be culturally relevant to people wherever they're at. If it's the therapist they need, we'll go into the past. We'll get people unstuck. Yeah. If it's stress in the present, we'll deal with that. And if it's the coaching that's required to help you be your best self, to really take that message of stop accepting, start designing, that's where the coach fits in. So I have worked some clients through therapy, and then they've come back and contracted with me as their coach. And I think that is one of the best privileges I can ever be given, is to watch somebody transform, not because of me, but because they're willing to take those steps, to do the work themselves, to ask the right questions. My job is to guide. Yes, I've got a professional body of knowledge, and then I've got the coaching stuff as well. That is just as much of a profession, but it's a little on the softer side. It's the art of what we do. There's the science and the art, and I've tried to put those together so that no matter where people get stuck, my answer is, let me get into that well with you. I'm not the cheerleader that goes, you can do it, come on out of there. I'm just going to be like diving into the shit with them going, this sucks. Let's get out of here one step at a time. Let me give you a hand up, not a hand out. I don't want to enable their dysfunction. I'm going to teach them the skills that they lack, give them a platform to vent and be real, and then we'll start working through this one step at a time, one decision at a time, one storm at a time, teaching them how to adjust their sails. That's my whole philosophy.
I'm going to pull a phrase out of there. I don't want to enable my dysfunction. That's something I don't want to do. And I think, here's a question to you guys. Are you enabling your dysfunction? Are you aware of it? Okay. Now that you're aware of it, are you enabling it? And if so, how? What a powerful question that is. Troy, I want you to talk about In Pursuit a little bit, because at the end of the day, your journey is taking you to this place, this precipice, and you're like, okay, you know what? I want to build something new. I want to forge something new that's relevant in this culture, your words. What is In Pursuit, and how can people reach out to you and view what it is that you guys are doing?
Okay, so allow me to change my uniform real quick. So,
That was slick. That was slick.
this is the other side of what I do. And for those who were watching the show with my dear friend Chris, Chris was the brains behind this professional coaching platform called In Pursuit. And it's about an understanding of a journey. Each one of us are on a journey. He and I are very different, but we have a similar goal. And I think this is the 1-2 punch that In Pursuit's going to be able to bring to the world is I will still do things in a kind of a John Maxwell way. Chris is more the Tony Robbins, Kerwin Ray kind of way, where It's like raw, uncut, the real testosterone of a guy. And I absolutely love him because I'm not effeminate by any stretch, but when people look at me and Chris, there's a difference in how we do what we do. And what In Pursuit is about is the same kind of idea as he. And this is where I'm hoping for more collaboration, because we all want the same thing. We want to create a platform and an awareness for men, to be able to be in pursuit of their journey. And this is what's led Chris and I to start In Pursuit, to be able to offer professional coaching services for people, no matter where they're at. When they contract with me, not only are they getting the coach, but they're getting the therapist. And they probably get a bit more of that velvet glove style, because I can't unlearn that, nor would I want to, because I know who I connect with. But some people, they won't be able to connect with me. And they need that raw, uncut, in-your-face passion that Chris offers people. And that's what I'm excited, because Chris has got a heart of gold, and his heart is for men. And if you just listen to 1 second about him talking about his son, you're going to be captivated, because he is that guy.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Whether it's Chris's style or me, there is a call to action for every single person out here. Do not accept your life. This is what In Pursuit stands for. How are you going to design something moving out of here? The mind that got you in it is probably not the mind that gets you out of it. So it's time to reach out. It's time to get the help that you need to unlock your true potential, and let's start living, not existing. That's what In Pursuit's all about.
I love everything that you just said, including especially the idea that you guys are going to be, as he grows and you know, the features and all the things that are coming into it. We'd love to carve out a little corner where In Pursuit can live and things like that. You guys are both already, committed to being part of the community and things like that within he. There will be further extensions where people have the opportunity to connect with you guys. If they feel that connection, they'll be able to connect with you. And I love being able to be that bridge and be a part of that. I know Candy and Shannon, certainly that's exactly what they want to be, because the need is so vast. And you know this, if we talk about a business mentality, the market is untapped. If you look at it that way, but if you look at it from a healer perspective, the need is so great. There has never been a time where the need for transformation combined with the place of awakening that is happening at the exact same time, it's jaw-dropping. Would you agree with that? Is that like, are we ready for this kind of thing? Do men need this kind of thing? Like, how vast is that need right now?
I would say we're dealing with a precipice of crisis. And even that word crisis is a very interesting word. One of the first things that I'll take any client through is a deep dive into what crisis is. And I love the Chinese for this. Crisis is 2 words in the Chinese: danger and opportunity. And for everybody listening right now, there is an opportunity. Most of us get stuck in the danger side. If you take off the letter D from danger, what are we left with? Anger. There's the root of most of our danger. Anger is feeding the heart of men because we're frustrated, we don't know what to do, and we don't have role models to teach us how to live. So we've accepted our fate. Let's get out of that danger. Let's start figuring out where the opportunities lie. We can change the questions. We can change how we think. And that is really the nature of crisis. It is a double-edged sword. It is a dangerous opportunity, but we need to start focusing on the opportunity and not the anger that it hides.
Oh, I got goosebumps. And yes, like, oh my God, the most heartbreaking, fearful moments of my life have ended up being the beginning of the process that have changed things for the biggest improvements of my life.
Yeah.
And I know many men can say the same. I'm not discounting. There are people who have lost loved ones, children. Tragedy has befallen them, and it's been. I'm not minimizing or discounting. I'm not minimizing or discounting people who are dealing with mental illness and things like that. I'm not minimizing anything like that. But there are a lot of people who go through crisis that if they just understood that that crisis was going to lead to something so much greater, that problem, when you start focusing on the solution to that problem, the solution actually takes things to a pretty fucking cool place. If you can wrap your head around that idea, what do you got? You got empowerment. That's how I feel. When you say that, I feel empowered, Troy.
And you're touching one of the most important catalysts that's often missing in mental health, and the reason for my namesake, hope. Men need hope. When you lose hope, suicide becomes suddenly a very real perspective, a very real possibility. How do we bring hope back into a very dark world, especially with COVID, especially with everything that's happened? All of us are dealing with it. I would be lying if I didn't say the stress of our present darkness around us didn't get to me at times.
Yeah.
I've been impacted by COVID. Even though I'm one of those people trying to be a beacon of hope, what happens when my clients lose their jobs? What happens when they lose hope? Even though I might be the one to help them through it, I'm one of the last people they reach out to because money's tight, all these other things. They try to preserve that safety instead of focusing on recovery. So it's a very hard balance. And we often don't prioritize the things that are actually going to move us forward. We move backwards into comfort instead of growth. And from what another thing I teach people later on in our series is you don't grow when you're comfortable. You have to be uncomfortable. So we call them growing pains for a reason. The other thing that I am thankful for, and for those listening, don't accept what is. Part of what we're moving towards is this new era of how to deliver high quality healthcare. You're in BC. I'm currently in Manitoba, and we're having a living room discussion where it's two guys and we can cross geographical boundaries and time zones in an instant. This is also what we're learning to do. The few of us are learning to embrace the technology side of this. I would love to have everybody in that chair that everybody saw for the most part of our journey today. The reality is that may not be an option. If you're in BC, if you're in Nova Scotia, I've got clients in California and Belize. So we can think possibility. You can connect. It doesn't matter where you are. The important thing is that you stick up your hand and you say, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. Yeah. And it's time for me to grow. It's time for me to be intentional, not accidental, in how I'm going to start moving forward and ask the right question. That's my hope for everybody coming at it today, is that they'll find the courage to face their fear.
Well, and if Candy or Shannon were in this room right now, and when they hear this podcast, they're just going to be smiling ear to ear, because that's exactly what they're trying to do with He Changed It. That's exactly it. You've summed it up. And we're a little longer than what we normally do. And I knew that was going to happen with you. That's why we put you at the end of the day, because we knew that was going to be the case. What's the best way to connect with In Pursuit right now?
Best way would be to check us out online, www.in-pursuit.ca.
Okay.
And read up on me. You can read up on Chris. And if you're curious about coaching and contracting, send us an email and we will work with you where you're at.
And you got a Facebook group and you do a show on Facebook too, right?
That's right. We have an In Pursuit podcast Thursday nights at 6 p.m. Mountain Time.
Yeah. And so that's Central or okay. Yeah. Okay.
p.m. Mountain, 7 p.m. Central, and 5 p.m. Pacific.
Gotcha.
three coaches there that are in three different time zones.
Right.
So it's, again, three coaches, three friends trying to share three different perspectives and add value to the community, much like heCast is doing as well. So that's something that people can follow and subscribe to. If you want that content coming out and you want to be a part of that community, like us, share us, start to get to know who some of the leaders are in this community of men trying to be men. We're going to ask those questions and we're going to boldly go where people don't want to go. And let's just figure this stuff out.
You started with Star Trek and you finished with Star Trek. I don't even know why the hell I'm doing this. You're the pro. What a bookend. Talk about bookending. There you go, buddy. Listen, Troy, I'm really grateful that you have come into my life via Chris, and I know there are no coincidences. There never have been in my life, and I'm so grateful. As we're going to promote you guys, you promote us. We appreciate that so much, but more so as the features roll out for heCast is going to get its own community. I'm going to spend a lot of time in there. I don't really want to hang out in the YouTube comment area and the comments on the podcast. Well, I appreciate them. They're great, but that's where I'm going to be spending my time. And I'm going to be inviting a lot of the guests to spend time in there with me, where we can all connect, where we can all, help each other and be beacons of hope for each other when things are dark for you, because they get dark for me too. I just glad to know that you exist, man. And I feel lighter today having talked to you like I always do. If ever there's anything we can do to help fill your cup, because you're a sponge for people's energy, just like I am. And when you help people, sometimes that sponge can fill up. Well, if you need your cup filled, we're here for you too, buddy. And I just want to thank you for everything, for every step of the journey that you've taken so far. I thank you for that. I thank you for sharing that journey and not becoming bitter and throwing in the towel. I thank you for being a solution seeker, and I thank you for being you, Troy. I can't, from the bottom of my heart, I'm so grateful for you.
You are more than welcome, and thank you for the offer to be in my corner. That you'd be surprised how rare that is, that someone would say, you know what, I've got your back. And I hear you and I accept it, and I really look forward to being able to lean into you and lean into what he stands for and to see where this path takes us both, because it is our journey. And this is what it stands for. And I'm just excited to see as we turn the page, especially as 2021 comes, let's start living. Let's start getting past our past, and let's just blow the lid off of what we think is possible. So.
Let's get past our past. There's another one, everybody. Hey, watch this podcast or listen to this podcast again and take notes, because there's a whole bunch of them there. Success leaves clues, and boy, the clues left in this podcast are amazing. That has been another episode of heCast, the official podcast of He Changed It. Thank you so much. If you were touched by this, share it with a friend. If you know somebody who's going through some stuff and they need to hear some of the things that Troy talked about here and that we discussed today, share it with them. And we're going to interact more and more and more as the features get plunked into the He Changed It app. Thank you so much